ITN News at 10 with Trevor MacDonald.
France refuses to extradite former MI5 agent. Lords precipitate crisis by defying the government again. High street gloom as shoppers stay at home. Sudan 6 months on, why the suffering continues. And one promises to pay the Queen and the bank manager. Good evening. The government suffered the embarrassment today of seeing the renegade former MI5 agent David Shaler freed from jail in France. A judge there rejected an application for his extradition to Britain on the grounds that his whistleblowing had been politically motivated. Mr. Shaler still faces arrest and prosecution if he sets foot in this country again. He said the government should stop persecuting him and address the issues he'd raised about the security services. ITN's Kevin Dunn reports.
David Shaler walked out of Paris's La Santé prison to be mobbed by his brothers. The former MI5 officer was sporting the Middlesbrough football shirt he was wearing when he was arrested in August.
Justice! Fantastic!
He was freed immediately when a French court threw out the government's attempt to extradite and prosecute him.
I'm glad to be out of prison, but I shouldn't have had to spend 4 months in prison for criticising MI5. But I said earlier, this is a very happy day for me in civil liberties, and a very sad one, an embarrassing one for MI5 and the government. I suggest that they now stop persecuting me and try and address the issues.
Mr. Shaler first fled to France over a year ago after disclosing that MI5 kept files on ministers, including Peter Mandelson. He also accused the security service of incompetence and bad management. He was arrested at the government's request after a further allegation that MI6 was involved in a botched attempt to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi. The French court found his motives for whistleblowing were political. His girlfriend, also ex-MI5, said other disaffected officers should come forward.
If they see that things are going wrong and they feel that they've got to follow the consciences and raise the concerns, I think they realise now that the law will be behind them to do so. I just hope that some sort of independent body will be put in place whereby real political oversight can exist over both MI5 and MI6.
John Wadham of the civil rights group Liberty welcomed the court's finding.
Because of course if it's politically motivated, I'm sure the British government don't want to be seen to prosecute somebody for political reasons. And now that the French court has found that, I hope that they would take a more sensible approach.
David Shaler still faces prosecution under the Official Secrets Act if he returns to Britain. So while tonight he is toasting freedom, he may also be beginning a life in exile. Kevin Dunn, News at 10.
In the last hour, the Lords have thrown out the government's plans for the European elections for a 5th time. Baroness Jay, the Labour leader in the upper house, conceded that the bill was now lost, but said the government would reintroduce it in the next session of Parliament. There was a real sense of constitutional crisis today as the Commons argued about last night's Lords vote. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
Prime Minister's questions this afternoon, the Commons in uproar. The dry constitutional issue of the European elections, closed lists versus open lists, suddenly flared into a rip-roaring political row. Hague versus Blair, head-to-head and tearing lumps out of each other.
Will he acknowledge that all independent opinion is against a voting system which denies the voter the right to vote for the candidate they prefer?
No, Madam Speaker, I don't accept that. This, however, is no longer about the system. It's about the hereditary Tory peers in the House of Lords.
The reason he lost in the House of Lords is because he lost the argument, and he's lost the argument in the House of Commons as well.
No, Madam Speaker, he is wrong. Were it not... No, he is wrong. Without Tory hereditary peers, he would have come nowhere near winning this vote.
Later, in a much quieter Commons, the government for the 5th time won a vote in favour of closed lists and for the 5th time sent it back down to the Lords. The Lords gathered yet again to hear the Tory side yet again insist that what was at stake was the cutting down to size of a presumptuous Labour government.
The problem is that the way the government has approached the closed list shows us all how a party can, in fact, deny all choice, deny choice to the people, and in fact even deny choice to their own party members.
But Lord Wetherell, former Speaker of the Commons, now an independent crossbencher who supports open lists, which is what the Tories want, nonetheless issued a stern warning against their tactics. The argument to be won, he said.
What will be remembered is that this unelected House has frustrated the will of the Commons on 5 occasions. My Lords, I think we should think very carefully before we do that this evening.
But in the end, the Tories, helped once again by their hereditary peers, won the vote, though by much less than last time. Some minds had clearly changed, but not enough to stop the bill introducing proportional representation for next year's European elections being killed off. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
And Michael Brunson joins us now from Westminster. Michael, what happens now?
We had originally thought that the government will simply say, well, that's it, we have to go back to first past the post voting for the European elections next June, so you know who to blame, the Tories. But not so. Lady J got up immediately after that vote and said, we are going to try and get this through again using what is known as the Parliament Act. Now that is an act which means that the Commons can push business through and the Lords can't stop it, but it has rather a long time delay in it through past the elections. So there's a bit of a problem there. They can only get this legislation through using the Parliament Act if the Tories decide to cooperate in the next session. And there was an intriguing hint then immediately by the Tory leader in the Lords, Lord Cranborne, where he did seem to be suggesting that he would, in fact, cooperate if it comes back in the next session. That's, in fact, led to Jack Straw just a few moments ago, the Home Secretary, talking about an apparent climb down. So this is all going to continue into next week and beyond.
Mike, how big a crisis is this?
It is a big crisis because using the Parliament Act is an extraordinary business. It's only been used twice in 50 years, and the last time was some 8 years ago.
Michael Brunson, thank you. The United Nations reported no problems for its arms inspectors today as they got back to work in Iraq. It's thought the team's first visits were to sites where they'd installed cameras and sensors for long-term monitoring. But the real test of the Iraqi promise of cooperation could lie ahead, as our Middle East correspondent Julian Mannion reports now from Baghdad.
The weapons inspectors are back in business. The familiar four-wheel drive vehicles left UN headquarters in Baghdad this morning, bound for destinations which, as ever, were not disclosed. These cars carried monitors working on long-term surveillance. A team that carries out the no-warning investigations will arrive in Iraq soon.
The members of the Security Council now want that Iraq's commitment to resume cooperation with UNSCOM and IAEA should be tested on the ground and proven on the ground.
The Iraqi government is continuing its propaganda drive against the US military threat. A concert at the Saddam Center even featured a 1960s protest song. But one of Iraq's leading political experts believes that another crisis may come soon.
The two sides are preparing themselves for another confrontation.
As simple as that?
This is the way I see it. And I think any rational person would see it like that.
A few days ago, Iraq's Tariq Aziz described cooperation with the weapons inspectors as a disgusting experience. Avoiding another crisis will depend, in part, on whether he, and above all his president, can swallow their pride. Julian Mannion, News at 10, Baghdad.
Men are to be granted social security payments on the death of their wives for the first time in a shake-up of traditional widows' benefits. The announcement came ahead of a European court ruling that's expected to find that the current system discriminates against widows. The changes will come in 2001. High street sales figures for October out today painted a worse picture than analysts had been expecting. Sales were 0.4% down on September's figure and 1% up on the figure for October last year. The supermarket group Safeway warned today of a tough Christmas for the stores. Here's our business editor Caroline Kerr.
The run-up to Christmas ought to be a bumper time for shops up and down the country. That's why today's retail sales figures for October are so worrying. It's a sign of the times that one of Marks & Spencer's suppliers warned today it might have to close 2 factories because of falling orders. Like many retailers, M&S is finding the going tough and has even cut prices mid-season. But today's figures showed despite widespread price cuts, we spent less in October than September. The fear of recession is affecting consumer confidence.
I mean, I think one is more careful, definitely. Absolutely, because you don't, one remembers what it was like before, so you're not going to go and do anything silly this time, I don't think.
If I'm in retail, I do notice that people are spending less, I think. We're expecting more sales, but they're not happening, and I think people are holding on to their money.
Expensive items like fridges and washing machines have been particularly badly affected. Analysts say people are becoming too worried about their jobs to splash out in the shops.
I just think it's a combination of rising unemployment, the widespread joblessness that we're seeing now, announcements of redundancy and job losses is hurting consumer confidence, and I think that people are a lot more cautious. They're cutting back, they're tightening their belts, and then this is being reflected in the retail sales figures today.
But at this time of year, retailers need more than just window shopping. Many city analysts think only another interest rate cut will give people the extra money in their pockets and the confidence to spend it. With just 7 shopping weeks left to Christmas, retailers and their customers will be hoping the Bank of England will cut interest rates again and give consumer confidence another boost. Caroline Kerr, News at 10, Central London.
We have more stories still ahead on News at 10 tonight, including the men who read your water meter, why they're no longer allowed to cut your supply. A special report on the crisis in Sudan, how there'll be no end to people suffering until a lasting peace is found. The Paymaster General and his brief apology about his financial interests, and...
Why don't you not come and open this bloody thing?
Why was Prince Charles so keen today to let someone else perform his royal task?